Finally, I'd like to make some very brief and possibly provocative comments on the 7 key actions that you've identified in your Harnessing the Tide report. They're all highly compatible with the new rural paradigm, but as I have tried to illustrate, the devil is in the details. I'll focus on this as I go through each of them. The first was to create a rural strategy for BC. This is a good idea, but if you do so, make sure you give it a rural, not an economic focus, even if your ultimate objective is economic. Quebec is the only province with a real rural policy. Newfoundland actually is not far behind. The others typically have economic or regional policies, usually with a made-in-urban flavor, with the occasional attempt to accommodate selected rural challenges. A real rural policy will be multi-sectoral, interdepartmental, and sensitive to the 3 features of rural that make these areas distinct: distance, density, and identity. An acid test for a rural policy is to ask the question, does this policy include plans to meet the special challenges of health, education, labor, investment, transportation, communication, and governance capacity that are found in rural areas? Does it reflect a strong understanding of the special nature of rural assets and how they work? Your second point is to create strong rural advocates. The window of opportunity for rural policy and research is rapidly closing. Urbanization of Canada continues and will continue. Although the number of people in rural continues to grow, it's outstripped by those moving to urban. The generation with rural roots is dying off, and most immigrants, who are, after all, the future of Canada, have only urban experiences. As reflected in many of the federal government's decisions, the awareness of rural conditions and the value of servicing rural interests is rapidly disappearing in the face of other pressures. Commodity producers have little, if any, stake in rural communities. Their eyes are on external trade, and the past trend of chasing after their smokestacks has revealed itself to undermine those communities in the long run. Our best bet when searching for institutional advocates is on provincial governments, since they have responsibility for municipalities; on utilities, since they're compelled to operate in rural areas and will only benefit if the economies of those communities are strong; on manufacturing industries, so long as we continue to find the niche markets that sustain them in rural areas; and on insurance companies, since they're vulnerable to natural disasters, and with climate change, rural areas are in for some big ones. Your third point is to create new regional development organizations. I would change this slightly to something like enhance the existing regional development organizations, because the language of this proposal betrays a limited view of the opportunities. Working with existing organizations has a number of advantages. They have more popular support, they probably know more about local conditions, and they're probably there because of a felt need. The principle is a good one. However, it requires innovation on the part of the government to meet the conditions of the regional groups. Consider drafting policies for relating to and enhancing a wider variety of regional groups. This is actually relevant for the following action item as well.